After watching last night, do you think it's going to be Seth Rollins as that fifth member for the Bloodline?
I can only go by what I saw on TV last night. And I don't know if we're going to play the audio of Seth Rollins backstage with Sammy, with Jimmy and Jay, but I believe the word is adamant. Seth Rollins was adamant about not teaming with Roman Reigns and the Bloodline. I mean, what else do we have to go by other than pure speculation?
That's the one thing that I can't connect when it comes to Seth Rollins. Like, Seth Rollins is like, how do you trust this guy? After everything that we've been through, you can't trust Roman Reigns. But if you really look at the history of this story between Seth and Roman, it's Seth Rollins that started all. Seth Rollins was the one to turn on the Shield. So a lot in what we say about Roman, that, man, if Roman would just humble himself and apologize for some of the things that he did in the past, maybe they could smooth out all the issues with the Bloodline. But it's the same thing with Seth Rollins. If Seth Rollins was to humble himself and say, you know what, I was the one that started this, I'm the one that's wrong, maybe that can iron out some of the differences that he has with Roman Reigns.
Dave, what happened last night, or what was said last night before Raw went off the air, that would make you think that there was even a possibility of Seth Rollins being the fifth member?
Well, you just said it. You said about what he said in the back with the Usos and Sami Zayn. So let's go back to last night and hear what Seth Rollins had to say. All right, so he's like you said, the word adamant. He was very adamant that I will not stand side by side with Roman Reigns. But that was before the matchup last night, Bully. And in the matchup last night, we definitely saw interference from Bloodline 2.0. And it cost Seth Rollins the victory last night. Bronson Reed came up on the winning end. So do you think what happened last night in that main event is enough for Seth Rollins to change his mind?
To me, what Seth said in the back trumps what happened in the ring.
Okay.
I mean, he was, I used the word adamant. I can't think of a better word. No way in hell, based on my history with Roman Reigns, no matter what happens, am I ever standing side by side with this guy again. Did you think what happened once Raw went off the air? Solo, popping in, Bronson Reed being able to get the victory over Seth. Do you think that was strong enough? Was something done that was so heinous, so atrocious, so bad to Seth that's going to make him change his mind before the WarGames rolls around?
If he was on the fence, I would say yes. But the way he spoke last night to Sammy and the Usos, I agree with you. I don't think it's enough. Like, if, he was adamant now, and he's been that way for a few weeks where he's like, I am not. The guy's a tyrant. And he even used, like, I don't want to see that guy back in power again. Meaning that, with Solo Sikoa as the head of the table, you're not nearly having as many issues as you did when Roman was at the head of the table. And you know what? Honestly, take last night aside, Roman did a lot more damage to the roster as the head of the table than Solo Sikoa has. So, yeah, I agree with you, Bully. If you just judge from what we saw last night, I don't think that's enough for Seth Rollins to change his mind. But you never know.
I mean, they'll build up to it, night of show. Who's that fifth member going to be? I'm sure that fifth member will not be standing out there with them at the side of the cage if that's the route they go. I don't want them to be. I want it to be a surprise. There's the other names floating out there that it could possibly be. But like I said, I don't know if after what I saw last night that Seth is going to change his mind.
Well, and the other thing is if it's not Seth, then who is it? We have 2 more SmackDowns and 1 Raw before we get to Survivor Series. So if it's not going to be Seth Rollins, Bully, I guess we get a hint of whoever it's going to be this Friday on SmackDown. We don't have many shows left before we get to WarGames.
I got to tell you, if I'm just looking at this from pure story, it's got to be Seth.
Yeah.
Because, we felt like Seth and Bronson were a bit of a force fit from the beginning. But they've done a good job of wiggling Bronson in there and making him make sense. Seth is like, nah, I don't want to be a part of it. They're investing a lot of time in these two men. If it's not Seth, who could it be? And who is going to actually make sense? We've done so much speculating. But I think we'll be scratching our heads afterwards as to if it's Punk or Cody or whoever else it is. It's like, why? Why did you waste this much time with Seth? Or if it's just to throw everybody off the scent.
Here's the thing. I got to be honest with you. And listen, the match is going to be fantastic. But I'm going to be honest with you, Bully. I feel like if it is Seth, I'm going to be a little let down. I would actually be more curious about it being somebody else and have it be a little bit of a swerve. If it's just Seth and Bronson, I'm going to be let down a little bit. Now, once we get to Survivor Series and we see the match, I probably won't be. But the build up to it, I would be a little bit let down. And it would make more sense to me, Bully, if, and again, I keep bringing this up, and I know, you and I really didn't get a chance to talk about it at length, but I really feel like Bronson Reed should have beaten Seth Rollins at Crown Jewel. Like if Bronson Reed was able to get the best of Seth Rollins time in and time again, then I can understand saying that I got to be a part of this. But this is kind of an example of, old school WWE 50-50 booking. Seth won and now Bronson won. So to me, that's not enough for Seth Rollins to say, all right, now I'm going to put all my convictions aside. Everything I feel about Roman Reigns, I'm going to put this aside because, I lost to Bronson Reed last night on Monday Night Raw. Now, if Seth Rollins was to lose the last time, then it would make more sense to me because Bronson Reed kept getting the best of Seth Rollins. But that's not the case here. Again, even more puzzling that they had Seth Rollins go over on Bronson Reed.
But last night, we saw Bronson Reed get the victory.
Yeah, but again, example of 50-50 WWE booking.
But what's the last thing you remember?
You're going to remember, but again, it's not the same. We saw Seth get a definitive win over Bronson Reed. You could look at last night's victory as help from the Bloodline. I think it would have made more sense if Seth makes that decision if Bronson kept getting the best of Seth Rollins.
You need the Bloodline to help Bronson Reed get the victory. You never want that your strong baby face to just succumb like that. I understand why you wanted to see it, but it makes more sense for the story. It shows that Bloodline 2.0, along with Bronson Reed, is a lot more of a united front than the OG Bloodline. And that's the story that they're trying to tell going into WarGames, that it's so lopsided. The heels are so much on the same page while the baby faces are in disarray. I mean, I think it was Jimmy or Jay, I think it was Jay last night, who basically told Seth Rollins, hey, we all got a problem with each other. I got a problem with him. He's got a problem with me, blah, blah, blah. They're just reinforcing how much that the baby faces, the OG Bloodline, is not getting along and is not on the same page. Now they don't even have a fifth member. So they're going into this match with the deck stacked against them.
All right, so let's say, and again, I want to keep the speculation going about could it be somebody other than Seth Rollins? And, we have 2 SmackDowns and we have one more Monday Night Raw before we get to Survivor Series. Let's just say
there's a lot of TV time left. There's a lot of real estate left for them to get to who it's going to be and make it make sense.
But if we get, let's just say we get Seth or somebody else. What you just said is 100% true, Bully, and the fact that Bloodline OG is fractured. Now, whether it's Roman's relationship with the Usos and Sami Zayn's relationship, and we again, still speculation about what that phone was and that toss of the phone onto the couch, and can you 100% trust Sami Zayn? I mean, going into Survivor Series, the fact that they're not on the same page and knowing what's leading up in the story going to WrestleMania, man, you got to expect that Bloodline 2.0 is going to beat OG Bloodline at Survivor Series, right?
You got to expect. And when you got to expect something to go a certain way, that's when they go in the opposite direction.
Yeah, I mean,
I listen, within the world of the WWE, the heels won't lose steam as long as they're given the opportunity to get their heat back. And that's where the 50-50 stuff comes in. So maybe we get to WarGames and the fifth member is able to put the baby faces over the top to get that victory, but we get some kind of surprise which gives the OG Bloodline the upper hand. Here's a hypothetical situation, top of my head, right?
Okay.
Just to back up my point. Seth winds up being the fifth member. Everybody on the babyface side is happy. They are able to get the victory over the heels, and all of a sudden the Rock's music hits. And everybody's distracted, and now the OG Bloodline is able to, Bloodline 2.0 is able to lay out the OG Bloodline and bloody them up and bust them open and put them through tables and throw them off the top of cages and put them through cages, and your sister's ass in there standing tall. What's the last thing you remember? You remember the heels standing strong as a unit destroying the baby faces.
And judging from what you're saying, you're thinking that we're most likely going to get The Rock at Survivor Series.
I'm just saying in that hypothetical situation that I gave you off the top of my head. If it's not Seth and it's Cody, how do you fit that one in?
Creatively, it doesn't fit unless Roman himself, and this is a possibility, Jonathan, to answer your question, where Roman says, you know what? We've asked everybody. Nobody wants to be a part of it. I'm going to have to approach Cody Rhodes.
You're onto something right there. Something just popped into my head. Roman approaching. Everybody has approached Seth about Roman, except who?
Roman has not approached Seth.
What if we get that? Now I'm intrigued.
Very intrigued, because once again, it really comes down to when Seth turned on Dean Ambrose and Roman Reigns and turned on the Shield.
So Seth has been saying, no, absolutely not. No way in hell. I am adamant that it will not be Roman Reigns. And who do we have begging him? Who do we have chasing him? We have Sammy, we have Jimmy, we have Jay. The fifth guy on the team is Roman Reigns. And Roman and Seth have the history, and we haven't seen Roman and Seth talk. Maybe that's what we're going to get with the one Monday Night Raw that's left, or the two SmackDowns that are left. The Roman-Seth face-to-face. The Roman-Seth sit-down. The Roman pouring his heart out to Seth. You know, we've been looking for this this apology from Roman Reigns, right? To the Usos or to Jimmy or Jay.
Or anybody, for that matter.
What if we hear the apology from Roman to Seth?
I'm on board. I'm on board because it is between those two. We have not, and I've been saying this for weeks, we have not seen Roman humble himself. But how did SmackDown go off the air on Friday night? With Roman with his head in his hands, just in disbelief of, I don't know where to turn now. I have nowhere to go.
Can't get a hold of the wise man. And once again, folks, speculation here, just playing with the creative,
of course,
with creativity. Can't get a hold of the wise man. Jimmy, Jay, and Sammy want it to be Seth. Seth is adamant about not tagging with Roman. Roman, head in his hands, end of SmackDown. What am I going to do? Got to take matters into my own hands. Maybe I have to, as you just said, Dave, humble myself to Seth Rollins. I'm interested, Dave, to see Seth and Roman. I don't even know if I would want to see it in the ring. Normally, I always want to see something in the ring. But I don't mind in my creative mind's eye seeing this in the back or as a sit down or in catering. But could you imagine Roman and Seth being eye to eye with one another with uncomfortable silence? Nobody's saying a word. It's almost like you're waiting with bated breath. You're on the edge of your seat like, oh, my God, what are they going to say? What are they going to say? What are they going to say? But all they're doing is staring at one another. Nobody says anything. I would create a very uncomfortable tone, very uncomfortable setting where they just won't stop looking at each other and nobody wants to speak first until Roman finally says something. And it's almost like the first words that come out of Roman's mouth, Seth just freaking bites his head off. Seth just goes, no! Just playing here, right?
Go ahead.
And then they get into the whole thing where Roman has to reason with Seth. Now I'm intrigued. Because now it becomes, this force of Seth and Bronson becomes a little bit more palatable because now the story shifts a little bit to Roman and Seth.
And it has to. And what you just said, Bully, I'm intrigued as well. I just started off the show saying, man, if the fifth member is Seth Rollins, I got to tell you, I'm a little disappointed. But if you get that going into Survivor Series, I'm not disappointed anymore. And there's ways you could do it, Bully. Maybe SmackDown ends on Friday night with, once again, Roman on the phone and says, you know what? You and I need to talk. I'll see you Monday night on Raw. And you don't know who he's talking to. You don't know. And then you see Seth in the back in Raw, and then Roman Reigns approaches Seth Rollins. Because that's the way it's got to go down. Doesn't make sense if Seth shows up on SmackDown. It's got to be Roman showing up on Monday Night Raw. Can't be the other way around. It's really got to be, as you said, Roman Reigns humbling himself to Seth Rollins and saying, almost asking Seth for his forgiveness for everything that's happened.
And if we recreate the same scene as last week, if we see Roman in the back again, and we see Roman with his phone in his hand, and he says, call Seth Rollins. And now the phone rings. And you hear the hello. And all you hear is Roman say, I'll see you on Monday night. Click. Now you've set the tone for Monday Night Raw. Wow, Roman is going to show up on Raw. He's going to confront or talk to Seth.
I love it.
Now I'm intrigued.
I love it. And you know what's even great about this? First of all, that connects the dots with everything that's gone on in the past with Roman and Seth Rollins. But you still have the tossing of the phone with Sami Zayn and that disconnected line to Paul Heyman. Somehow, some way, I think Sami Zayn is going to be a bigger factor in this than he is right now. And I think Paul Heyman is going to show his face at some point as well. Again, layers to the story, as we always say, Bully. Why is this story so great? Because there's so many different angles and so many different layers to this story. Roman and Seth, though a big one, is just one plot line amongst a lot of other plot lines in this Bloodline story. And that's not even talking about what's going on with Solo and Bloodline 2.0 and The Rock, who at some point, we're going to see The Rock again at some point. A lot connected with this story. And I think yesterday you mentioned it about getting deep in the weeds and it being very, very detailed. And maybe could it, and you didn't say it was, you asked the question, could it be too detailed? I think you're seeing the reasons why it needs to be detailed. Because if you're going to go this deep and you're going to go this far and this long with a story, Bully, I think you really have to be detailed like this story is.
Now, let me take you back to Bad Blood when we saw Cody and Roman standing side by side. and we got The Rock. We get The Rock's entrance. We get The Rock staring down Cody and Roman in the same place at the same time. The Rock obviously has an issue and a story with both Roman Reigns and Cody Rhodes. But if Cody is not involved and it's just Roman Reigns and we do see The Rock again, do we see The Rock come for Cody or for Roman? See, there are so many question marks. That's why it's hard to kind of break down the whole bloodline thing when there are this many variables, this many missing puzzle pieces. It's strictly speculation. We can come up with a lot of really fun ideas on the show of the direction that they want to go in or they might go in. But reading the writing on the wall now and knowing exactly what's going to happen come WrestleMania, I don't think is that easy to do.
It's because look at the people that you have. Cody. You could have Cody Kevin, you could have Cody Randy, you could have Cody Roman, you could have Cody Rock. You know, with Roman, you could have Roman Rock, Roman Solo, Roman Jacob Fatu, Roman Seth Rollins. Seth Rollins, you could have Seth and CM Punk. There's so many different avenues and ways that you can go down towards WrestleMania 41.
And based on the pile driver, you can definitely see Kevin and Randy. We can almost eliminate Kevin and Randy from the picture, can't we?
You could. I mean, would it... Maybe we don't see Randy until Rumble. Imagine Kevin Owens is alone in that ring. He's waiting for the next participant to come down that aisle. Randy Orton's music hits. What is that going to set up? Randy and Kevin at WrestleMania.
If they were to put, I keep going back to Cody as the fifth man. If they stay adamant about Seth, it's not going to be Seth, and they go to Cody. That puts Cody and Roman back together once again. And it leaves you with the opportunity to have The Rock come out after the match again and address Cody and Roman at the same time.
And that's what Jonathan said. Jonathan mentioned about Cody, and 3 weeks ago when he said he first tried to call in and get on the air and the phone lines have been busy, it made more sense. But it still can make sense from what you just said. Maybe the whole thing is to get back to Cody and The Rock. If you wanted to get back to Cody and The Rock, an easy way to plant the seed is to have Cody as the fifth member of the Bloodline, OG.